Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking, events occur, and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
The Senate has dismissed allegations by the House of Representatives that is hindering legislative progress by delaying concurrence on bills passed by the lower chamber. During plenary on Tuesday, Senate President Godswill Akpabio and Senate Leader Bayemi Bamidele addressed the matter, emphasizing that the upper chamber has remained diligent in considering bills transmitted from the House, responding to recent claims that the Senate failed to act on over 140 bills passed by the House of Representatives, including several sponsored by Speaker Tajuddin Abbas. Senate leader revealed that no fewer than 6 concurrent bills were reviewed by the Senate just last week. The clarification followed tension in the House of Representatives last week, where members of the Green Chamber resolved to suspend further consideration of Senate-originated bills, citing persistent delays in legislative concurrence by the Red Chamber. However, while presenting one of the House-originated bills during Tuesday's plenary, Bamidele reiterated that the Senate has consistently processed concurrent bills in accordance with its constitutional mandate. The Senate on Tuesday approved 22.43 trillion naira for the Nigerian Communications Commission (NCC) and 15 billion naira for the Universal Service Provision Fund (USPF) as budgets for the 2025 fiscal year. Approvals followed the presentation of reports by the Senate Committee on Communications delivered by its chairman, Senator Ikra Belbis. During plenary, Belbis described the NCC as a key institution driving Nigeria's digital transformation agenda and urged his colleagues to endorse the committee's recommendations. In a related development, the Senate also approved a 15 billion naira budget for the Universal Service Provision Fund, which is administered by the NCC. The USPF is tasked with expanding telecommunication access to underserved and rural areas across the country. According to Senator Belbis, the 2025 USPF budget includes 10.9 billion naira allocated for projects and programs, 4.04 billion naira for recurrent expenditure, and 53.96 million naira for capital expenditure. The approvals come as the Senate continues deliberations on the National Digital Economy and E-Governance Bill 2025, a legislative initiative aimed at enhancing digital service delivery and driving governance reforms across the public sector. The federal government has formally set 16 years as the minimum age for admission into tertiary institutions in Nigeria. The Minister of Education, Tajuddin Tunji Alausa, announced this on Tuesday during the 2025 policy meeting of the Joint Admission and Matriculation Board held in Abuja. Alausa will emphasize that the age benchmark is now official and non-negotiable, one that any admission carried out outside its central admissions processing system will be considered illegal, and those found culpable will be prosecuted in accordance with the law. Meanwhile, vice chancellors of universities in the country have adopted 150 as a minimum cutoff mark for 2025-2026 admission. The decision was reached in a voice vote supervised by the Registrar of the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAM, Professor Ishaq Oloyede, on Tuesday at a policy meeting on admission in Abuja. At the meeting, the minimum cutoff point for admission into polytechnics was pegged at 100, while the Colleges of Education and Agriculture adopted 100 as an entry point. Annual policy meeting sets guidelines for the conduct of admissions into universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education for the coming academic session. The National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, has appealed to the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, to shelve its planned strike over delay in the payment of June's salary to its members. A statement signed by its National Vice President on Inter-Campus and Gender Affairs, Felicia Akobundosu. In Abuja on Tuesday, Nance said that any industrial action by ASU at this time would destabilize the stable academic calendar that had been enjoyed by the universities in the past 2 years. Akimbodosu noted that the students were always at the receiving end anytime the academic union embarks on a strike. Said that rather than withdrawing their services in universities across the country, the leadership of ASU should engage the federal government in order to resolve the matter without any face-off. She expressed optimism that engaging with the federal government in dialogue on the issue of delayed salary payment will resolve the matter without the need for ASU to down tools. Akimbodosu added that students and their parents could not afford any disruption in their academic calendar, particularly in the face of the current economic situation, and appealed to the leadership of the academic union to be considerate. She also appealed to the federal government to address the issue of delay in the payment of salaries of the university lecturers to find a lasting solution. Medical doctors in Ondo State, under the aegis of the National Association of Government, General and Dental Practitioners, have declared a 3-day warning strike starting from Monday, July 14, 2025. The statement signed by the chairman of the state chapter of the association, Richard Obe, and Secretary Adekunle Owolabi said the strike is in response to what they described as gross neglect of the health sector and the welfare of medical professionals by the Ondo State government. The statement also highlighted the shortage of medical personnel, with some general hospitals operating with just one doctor per entire local government area. A sudden increase in taxation from April 2025 without prior consultation and non-payment of salaries and allowances to 8 newly recruited doctors employed since October 2024. The doctors also lamented the unpaid hazard allowances for October to December 2023 and January 2024, outstanding promotion arrears from June to December 2024, salary shortfalls and unpaid allowances for other members. They warned that failure to address the demands during the warning strike will result in an indefinite industrial action with widespread consequences for the state's already fragile health system. The association assured members of the public of their commitment to healthcare delivery, emphasizing that they can no longer continue to work under such difficult conditions. Still to come, ADC mobilizes 97 lawyers to defend interim leaders in court. FCT police, DSS, military activate joint patrols to curb kidnapping. One chance. Stay with us.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
Government has stated that President Bola Tinubu remains undistracted by the formation of an opposition coalition under the platform of African Democratic Congress, ADC. According to the government, the Tinubu administration is steadfast in its commitment to implementing meaningful reforms and driving real economic growth for the Nigerian people. The federal government also reiterated that all Nigerians have a constitutional right to freely exercise their freedoms of association and expression. However, it emphasized that President Tinubu will not be deterred by political maneuvering or distractions. This was disclosed in a statement issued in Abuja on Tuesday by Mohammed Idris, the Minister of Information and National Orientation. 3 members of the African Democratic Congress, ADC, have filed a suit challenging the interim leadership of a party led by a former Senate President, David Mark, before Federal High Court in Abuja. In the suit, the plaintiffs Adeyemi Emmanuel, Ayodeji Tolu, and Haruna Ismaila asking the court to determine the legality of the interim leadership of the ADC. They claim that Mosu lacks the right to convene either a National Working Committee or National Executive Committee meeting since his tenure as National Chairman has expired, saying that interim executives cannot and should not act in a leadership capacity, having been appointed by an illegal meeting. Plaintiffs have asked the court to declare the appointment of Mark, Aregbesola, and Abdullahi as unconstitutional, unlawful, null and void, and to issue an order restraining the Independent National Electoral Commission from recognizing the interim national executive of the party. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, a former Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amechi, presidential candidate of the Labour Party LP in the 2023 elections, Peter Obi and Nasiru El-Rufai, former governor of Kaduna, are at the forefront of the opposition campaign. The African Democratic Congress, ADC, the political platform leading the 2027 coalition, has announced that no fewer than 97 lawyers are prepared to represent the party in an ongoing legal case. In a statement released by its media unit on Tuesday, the ADC accused the All Progressive Congress, APC, of orchestrating a lawsuit using names of individuals who, according to the party, are non-bona fide members of the ADC in an attempt to challenge its interim leadership. The legal battle began on Monday when 3 aggrieved individuals filed a suit at the Federal High Court in Abuja seeking the removal of Senator David Mark as the interim leader of ADC. In its response, the ADC stated that the names used in the court filing allegedly under the influence of the APC do not appear in the party's membership registers, either physical or digital, in Kogi or Nasarawa State. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, has uncovered a major illegal operation involving the sale of counterfeit chemicals, expired food flavors, unauthorized fertilizers, and repackaged pharmaceutical raw materials valued at over 1 billion naira in the Alakbere area of Ketu, Lagos State. In a statement released on Tuesday, NAFDAC disclosed that 3 suspects were arrested and 3 warehouses stocked with hazardous substances were sealed during an enforcement operation. Addressing journalists during the raid, the Director of Investigation and Enforcement at NAFDAC, Dr. Martins Iloyimade, said the operation was based on credible intelligence regarding a criminal network involved in large-scale counterfeiting of food and chemical products. It further revealed that numerous controlled substances and high-risk materials, including fertilizers that require special clearance from the Office of a National Security Advisor, were discovered at the site without any form of authorization. Dr. Leonard Omokbariola, Director of Chemical Evaluation and Research at NAFDAC, gave a comprehensive breakdown of the dangerous items recovered during the operation. He described the warehouse as a makeshift repackaging facility where expired substances were relabeled with falsified expiry dates, some extended as far as 2026, and misleading labels such as Made in China and QC certified. NAFDAC officials emphasized that expired food grade and pharmaceutical grade chemicals cannot be revalidated and must be disposed of using the agency's approved destruction protocols. Over 500 houses have been submerged while property worth millions of naira were lost due to floods in Kaba, the headquarters of Kaba Bunu local government area of Kogi State. In Ondo State, flood occasioned by a 3-day downpour in the 3 senatorial districts of the state have displaced hundreds of residents. Also, 7 bridges, according to sources, collapsed in some of the affected communities, cutting off residents from accessing farms, markets, and their workplaces. The rainfall, which occurred consistently for 3 days, made the streams and brooks in the areas to overflow their banks and flooded the communities with devastating effects. The Ideiya community in Kaba metropolis was said to be the hardest hit by the incident, resulting from rainfall that started from Wednesday night. A traditional ruler of Ideiya community and another community leader in the area were reported to have lost their homes, including their personal belongings. The flood also affected some places of worship and drowned more than 1,500 domestic animals. The member representing Udenu Iweze constituency in the House of Representatives, Dennis Abu, has identified corruption as a major factor hampering the development of Nigeria. Abu made a remark during an anti-graft town hall meeting tagged Corruption Touri, organized by Signature Media and Development Foundation, in conjunction with the Mark Arthur Foundation at Obolafo in Udeni local government area of Enugu State. Correspondent Raymond Ken Mbata has more.
Abo, who was the guest of honor at the 15th edition of Corruption Tori, spoke on the evils associated with aiding and abetting corruption, both in the government offices and in the daily lives of citizens. He stressed the need for all to join in the fight against corruption, which he said comes in the form of failed contracts, sale of fake and substandard drugs, cheating of customers at the marketplace, and examination malpractices, among several others.
Election rigging. Politicians. Relevant people is somebody. Those who know can't be in is somebody. No, if they go before drama, each the election. If they go there, no dine. More if they can the voice, every guy. Oh, well, you must take. I can say, Rodor Shidorike and somebody. Other than I don't Shidorike, more than Castle and Washa. Another gave Mercedes, another gave cheap. And another gave only for Mr. Venza. I let her Yahoo boys. He had a Yahoo book. Let the Jackie computer. Even I'm on a computer, is there no man no do it? Mama, the echo man Tara Fuji, they if you make computer, zero noshi and substandard drugs. They more one and sometimes people are going on in and Panadol or have a chocolate kitchen. Instead of all equal in Aya, it should know for you again also. I never kidney failure. I never went but I never man achieve with the ego. How can you, in order to get money and a good man, you can know man poison in the name of medicine. 1, 2, 3. Only one also had a question of a kidney failure.
He admonished participants to report and condemn cases of corruption, as well as praising and rewarding uprightness, while challenging parents and authorities to punish corruption rather than encouraging graft, both at home and at workplaces. He also took a swipe at politicians who give campaign speeches in poetry and deliver dividends in prose, highlighting the need for sincerity when occupying public office.
Don't promise what you will not fulfill. Oh, but failed promises daily with the bad governance. When you put them for your every tonight, you didn't oh, was that about cheap? Or about cheap water, I will go for Luchi. I will get when you show with them. Cheap water from day to day, from week to week, from month to month. I will get an affair.
The President and Chief Executive Officer of Signature Media and Development Foundation, Vin Martin Obiorailo, said that the intention of the town hall is to sensitize the people, including students, on the dangers of corruption and how to fight it.
You know, they say that you're the leaders of what? There will be no tomorrow. If you don't join now to fight corruption, and the first thing that there will be no tomorrow, let me explain it to you. Open a university, you get a near, and when you finish your secondary school, there will be no university to go to. When you finish university, there will be no job to take because of corruption. Who's on email? Aro Yabage, Imafu Hospital, every year. Back on all the governors in all they represent in the Udenu or the West, or the Enugu, or the Oyo States. Any ego geji dozi obodo. There have been no school, there have been no future.
From Udenu local government area, Obulafo, Raymond Ken Mbata reporting for Signature TV.
In response to recent security challenges in the Federal Capital Territory (FCT), a FCD Police Command has launched a coordinated joint security patrol in collaboration with military and paramilitary agencies. The operation targets crimes such as kidnapping, one-chance, robbery attacks, and vandalism of public property. The agencies participating in the operation include the Nigeria Police Guards Brigade, Army Headquarters Garrison, Naval Unit, Abuja, Nigerian Air Force, Department of State Services, DSS, Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, and the Federal Road Safety Commission. According to a statement issued by the FCT Police Public Relations Officer, Superintendent Josephine Ade, intelligence-led security operation was officially activated on Monday, July 7, 2024. Stated that the joint strategy is specifically designed to combat criminal elements and ensure the continued safety and protection of residents across the FCT. The Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPCL) has donated 35 hybrid compressed natural gas (CNG) powered buses to the Presidential Initiative on Compressed Natural Gas, reinforcing its support for the federal government's transition to cleaner energy solutions. An official handover ceremony held at the NNPC Towers in Abuja, Group Chief Executive Officer of the NNPC Limited, Bashir Ojulari, restated the company's unwavering commitment to the national gas agenda and energy transition goals. Speaking at the event, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources Gas, Ekberikpe Ekbo, described the buses as more than just vehicles, calling them tools of economic empowerment, environmental sustainability, and social equity. At least 1 in 6 children in Katsina State reportedly die before reaching their 5th birthday, a sobering statistics that highlights the urgent need to strengthen child survival interventions in the state. The figure translates to 159 deaths per 1,000 live births. Katsina State has an estimated population of 9.64 million, of which approximately 4.5 million are children. The Chief of UNICEF Field Office in Kano, Rahama Rihod Farah, discloses on Tuesday during a media dialogue on child-sensitive budgeting and planning organized by the UNICEF Kano Field Office, collaboration with the Katsina State Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning. Farah noted that despite ongoing efforts to improve the welfare of children in the state, the data presents a grim reality. Only 41% of children are fully immunized, leaving the majority vulnerable and preventable and life-threatening diseases. It further revealed that 3 out of every 4 children in Katsina are multidimensionally poor, lacking access to basic services such as health care, education, and proper nutrition. In addition, over 60% of children in the state live in monetary poverty, significantly weakening their household's ability to meet essential needs. The data also shows that 1/3 of primary school-age children are out of school, posing a major threat to the state's future human capital and economic development. The media dialogue held at the Federal Teaching Hospital in Katsina was attended by heads and representatives of various ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as civil society organizations in the state. Up ahead, Trump says he would impose 50% tariff on copper imports. Ukraine's Zelensky says he ordered intensive contacts with U.S. for critical deliveries of arms. Stay with us.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket. Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, Wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
The installation of Nigerian traditional leader Eze Chukwudi as Eze Ndibo Ghana, King of Igbo people in Ghana, sparked widespread protest and public outrage in several parts of Ghana. The development has drawn criticism from youth groups and cultural advocates who argue that the recognition of a foreign monarch threatens Ghana's sovereignty and undermines the integrity of its traditional chieftains institutions. Protesters in Accra and parts of the eastern region were seen carrying placards with messages such as "No foreign thrones in Ghana" and "Honor our heritage." Tensions heightened after images of Eze Iheanacho's grand palace in Accra surfaced online, showcasing traditional architecture and royal emblems. The title Eze Ndibo is traditionally used within Igbo communities abroad as a symbolic cultural role, serving mainly to unify members of the diaspora. However, critics in Ghana warned that allowing such titles may open the door to parallel leadership structures by foreign communities, potentially conflicting with Ghanaian laws and customs. There have also been unconfirmed reports suggesting that Eze Iheanacho plans to establish a 50-acre Igbo kingdom in Old Ningo, claims that have further stoked public suspicion. Concerns have grown over alleged land acquisitions by members of the Igbo community, although no official documentation has yet been presented. Public reactions intensified after a viral video showed Ghanaian broadcaster Captain Smart kneeling before Eze Iheanacho in a public event, a gesture that sparked heated debate across social media platforms. Some citizens are now urging the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs to clarify whether Ghanaian law permits foreigners to assume royal titles on Ghanaian soil. In response to the controversy, Eze Chukwudi Iheanacho has defended his position, insisting that the title is purely ceremonial and intended to foster unity among the Igbo community in Ghana. Liberian President Joseph Boakai has launched what his office describes as an unprecedented reconciliation campaign, overseeing memorial services for 2 assassinated presidents and issuing the government's first apology to war victims. The high-profile ceremonies come more than 2 decades after the end of civil conflicts that resulted in some 200,000 deaths and saw widespread atrocities, including massacres, rape, and the use of child soldiers. They also coincide with calls by human rights groups for domestic war crimes prosecutions, which have yet to start despite an executive order to establish a war crimes court last year. Wakai's apology came on Saturday at an event in the capital Monrovia, where he pledged to make July 5 an annual day of remembrance. In the lead-up to that event, Wakai attended a service honoring President Samuel Doe, who took part in a coup in 1980 and died at the hands of fighters loyal to warlord Prince Johnson in 1990, less than a year after fighting broke out in Liberia. Johnson, who died last year, went on to become a senator and political kingmaker, highlighting what critics describe as entrenched impunity. Boakai also recently spoke at a reburial service for President William Talbot, who was executed in the 1980 coup that also saw the public execution of 13 members of Talbot's cabinet on a beach in Monrovia.
We don't see any sign of remains. We scoop another 2 feet on and on until we get to the remains. Then we take our time, remove them and categorize the skeleton that we need.
Of history. These wrongs have left scars, but they have also left us with responsibility. A responsibility to turn our sorrows into seeds of hope, to draw from our pain a renewed sense of purpose, and to ensure that the sacrifices of the past were not in vain. Let us allow our collective memory to serve not as a point of division, but as a force of unity. Let the stories of loss and resilience instill in us a deeper sense of patriotism and a lasting commitment to peace, justice, and reconciliation.
I am super excited and can't believe that in my life I've been able to see this 45 years after I'm 76 years old and I still feel strong enough to be able to continue to honor him, to be able to come here. But our main thing is to identify the remains of our father. And we want to put a closure today. We want to put him to rest. He's at rest now. Let me tell you now, he's at rest. His spirit is well with that. But we want to be able to put whether we find some bones or whatever, to put it to rest.
U.S. President Donald Trump plans to visit the devastated region of Texas on Friday after deadly floods over the July 4 weekend killed at least 100 people. That toll in Kirk County crept up to 87 on Tuesday. Search and rescue efforts continued in flood-ravaged central Texas. According to officials in the county, was hit by the disaster. Torrential rains before dawn on Friday deluged the Guadalupe River, which burst its bank and killed dozens of people living behind mangled piles of debris, trees and cars. At least 56 adults and 30 children have been killed in Kirk County. Sheriff Larry Later said at a press conference with more than 24 victims yet to be identified. Authorities have not determined if the 87th victim was an adult or a child. Some of the victims were spending their summer at Camp Mystic near the river's banks, and 5 children and 1 camp counselor were still unaccounted for on Tuesday.
But the response has been incredible, and the fact that we got along so well, I don't know, I don't even think that's a political thing, but we got along so well, and it was so unified. I think a lot of lives have been saved. That could have been as bad as it was, and you could have lost double or triple. This thing was just really horrible. Well, congratulations on a great job, and appreciate it. I know you're going down. I'll be going down on Friday with First Lady. We'll be taking a trip, and we don't want to get in anyone's way because that's what happens. The president goes and everyone's around focused on. I don't want anyone to focus on us, but it's possible they could have somebody saved still. There's a lot of areas. It's a big area, and probably unlikely at this point, but there could be. They're thinking there could be.
Sandy Gilmer has spent hours on the banks of Guadalupe River in central Texas, trudging through the mud and helping small communities dig out after deadly floods that have killed at least 109 people. The disaster relief chaplain says, as a Texan, a super American, there is no place she'd rather be than there, helping those who have lost everything. When time permits, Gilmer takes a break to help those around her with prayer. It is a small moment of comfort in the community's greatest time of need. Local and federal emergency officials have faced questions about whether they could have warned people in flood-prone Texas Hill Country sooner. Gilmer said while she respects the works of a National Weather Center, the disaster has shown there's room for improvement. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that there will be no amnesty for agricultural workers as the administration moves to deport all immigrants in the country illegally. During a cabinet meeting, U.S. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said the administration wants an American workforce on farms. Asked about land already owned by Chinese-owned companies, Rollins said it's a massive national security issue.
But obviously this president's vision of no amnesty, mass deportation continues, but in a strategic way, and then ensuring that our farmers have the labor that they need. Secretary Chavez-DeRimmer has been a leader on this. Obviously this comes out of the Labor Department, but moving toward automation, ensuring that our farmers have that workforce, and moving toward an American workforce. So all of the above.
We've got to give the farmers the people they need, but we're not talking amnesty.
But obviously, the Chinese owning of farmland in our country is a massive national security issue. And for the media, you can see the yellow is where all of the farms have been purchased over the last number of years. And the red is around all of the military bases where that farmland has been purchased. So this is a massive national security issue. The press conference this morning included 3 of our greatest governors as well, Sarah Sanders from Arkansas, Jim Pillen from Nebraska, and Bill Lee from Tennessee. The states have begun taking a leadership role to ban the purchasing of China farmland, obviously.
26 states limit or ban foreign businesses, governments or nationals from owning private farmland, according to the National Agricultural Law Center. And some of those laws have faced legal challenges. Only about 3.4% of U.S. farmland is owned by foreign entities, and Canada owns the largest share, about 30%, according to USDA. President Donald Trump said he would announce a 50% tariff on imported copper on Tuesday in an effort to boost U.S. production of a metal critical to electric vehicles, military hardware, the power grid, and many consumer goods. U.S. COMEX copper futures jumped more than 10% after the announcement. Trump told reporters at a White House cabinet meeting that he planned to make the copper tariff announcement later in the day, but did not say when the tariff would take effect. The Trump administration announced a so-called Section 232 investigation into U.S. imports of a red metal in February. The deadline for the investigation to conclude is in November. National Mining Association and the American Critical Criminals and Minerals Association did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Freeport-McMoRan, the largest U.S. copper producer, did not immediately respond to requests for comments.
We did steel, as you know, they're 50%. We did aluminum, 50%. Lumber just came out.
Weren't you, that's copper?
And we did cars. And now, today we're doing copper.
Copper and lumber. What would that tariff be on? The section tariff?
I believe the tariff on copper.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva said on Tuesday that his country aims to triple trade flows with India from $12 billion last year in the short term without giving a more specific time frame. Speaking alongside Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi after a state visit in Brasilia, Lula also said Brazilian plane maker Embraer wants to strengthen its presence in India, partnering with companies there. Lula also said that expanding the preferential trade agreements between India and the South American bloc, Mercosur, could help reduce both tariff and non-tariff barriers that are limiting trade. During his speech, Lula reiterated the sovereignty of the BRICS member countries, said that they will not accept interference following U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs, adding that other nations have the right to reciprocate. Trump's administration's decision to extend a negotiating deadline for tariff rates is prolonging uncertainty and instability for countries. Executive Director of the United Nations Trade Agency said on Tuesday. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday ramped up his trade war, telling 14 nations from powerhouse suppliers such as Japan and South Korea to minor trade players that they now face sharply higher tariffs from a new deadline of August 1.
The reciprocal tariffs will no longer go into effect tomorrow, as originally announced, but be extended for another few weeks until 1st of August. This move actually extends the period of uncertainty, undermining long-term investment and business contracts and creating further uncertainty and instability. Economic uncertainty has real-world consequences, as we all know, on countries and on sectors. Adding to the uncertainty created by the tariffs and related trade measures, we're simultaneously seeing deep cuts in development aid, creating a dual shock for developing countries in the world of trade and aid. G7 countries, which together account for around 3/4 of all official development assistance, are set to slash their aid spending by 28% next year, compared to 2024 levels. This would be the biggest cut in aid since the G7 was established 50 years ago. And this is from Oxfam. In short, in today's context, a perfect storm is brewing. Just as trade becomes more unpredictable, external support through aid is also shrinking.
One of the examples of the instability is the gold trade.
But not all countries, of course, feel the impact in equal measure. All these factors hit those with the most to lose the hardest. The countries facing the highest reciprocal tariffs are also the least developed, with Lesotho, Laos, Madagascar, and Myanmar facing rates between 40% and 50%. Laos PDR and Myanmar now both face a 40% rate, as announced yesterday, which is lower than the initial 48% and 44% respectively, but still among the highest announced thus far. I think in the long run, it will have a negative impact on the U.S. economy, broadly speaking. I'm not clear on what the plan is, what the long-term plan is, and I presume there is one. But from my perspective at this point, I don't see a win here in the long term.
Countries have been under pressure to conclude deals with the U.S. after Trump unleashed a global trade war in April that roiled financial markets and sent policymakers scrambling to protect their economies. Thick smoke loomed over the southern French city of Marseille as a wildfire approached on Tuesday. City center smoke was already visible in the air as people walked by. Hundreds of firefighters battled a fast-moving wildfire that reached the outskirts of the city on Tuesday, forcing people to stay indoors and the nearby airport to close. Aided by firefighting helicopters and aircraft, firefighters had the blaze under control by evening, officials said, but a forecast of more strong winds meant it might yet advance further towards France, second most populous city. The fire, fanned by winds of up to 70 kilometers per hour, could be smelt in the center of Marseille as thick clouds of smoke hovered over the city on the Mediterranean coast. The fire has burned through 1,730 acres and was considered to be under control, even though it is still burning, Regional Prefect Georges Francois Lacour said. About 20 buildings have been at least partially hit by the fire, but no fatalities have been reported and hundreds of homes have been saved by firefighters, he said. Over 700 firefighters were battling the blaze, aided by firefighting helicopters and aircraft. As the fire was spreading, residents of Marseille received official alerts on their phones, telling them to stay at home and put damp clothes on any openings. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron laid wreaths at the statue of Winston Churchill and the statue of Charles de Gaulle on Tuesday. Macron, who enjoys a strong personal relationship with King Charles, was only greeted by the royal family, including heir to the throne Prince William and his wife Princess Catherine, before they travelled in horse-drawn carriages for a procession in Windsor. The official state visit comes 16 years after late Queen Elizabeth hosted then French President Nicolas Sarkozy. 3 men were found guilty on Tuesday over an arson attack on Ukraine-linked businesses in London, the British officials said was ordered by Russia's Wagner mercenary group and was the latest malign activity on behalf of Moscow in the UK. Last year's blaze at an industrial estate in East London targeted 2 units, including one for a company which delivered packages to Ukraine, including satellite equipment from Elon Musk's Starlink. Prosecutor Duncan Penny told London's Old Bailey Court at the start of a trial last month that the arson was organized by Dylan Earl, 21, who had pleaded guilty to aggravated arson and a charge under the National Security Act. Earl's guilty plea to preparing conduct for acts which endangered life made him the first person to be convicted under the National Security Act introduced last year to tackle hostile activity by foreign states. Penny said Earl was knowingly acting at the behest of a Wagner group, banned as a terrorist organization, and knew it was acting against Ukrainian and for Russian interests.
I think since 2018 and our change in response towards state threats, particularly from Russia, but also from Iran and others, we've made the UK a hostile operating environment for those governments. But as a result, they've diversified and are now contacting relatively young people to act on their behalf as proxies in doing their activity. But of course, we're very agile in our response model. So of course, we need to pivot our response model and work ever more closely with international partners and the intelligence agencies to ensure that we're match fit and we're responding to that. And this is a good example of us being able to work with local policing, who really did provide a really very, very professional response to the initial fire. And they were the ones that contacted counter-terrorism policing here and pointed out the relevance of the warehouse. The way I would describe it is being aware but not alarmed, because the reality is this is the world we're currently operating in. More than 20% of our work comes from foreign states in counter-terrorism policing, and of course we need to respond to that, and our partnership with the public is integral. So all I would say to the public is don't be alarmed by it, but certainly be alert. If you're concerned in any way, contact counter-terrorism policing and we will respond.
Jake Reeves, 23, also admitted aggravated arson in relation to a fire in March at an East London warehouse. Ni Kojo Mensah, 23, Jakim Rose, 23, and Ignace Asema, 20, denied a charge of aggravated arson, but were convicted by a jury at London's Old Bailey Court. Paul English, 61, was cleared of the same charge. Demetrius Palaskas, 23, and Arson Evans, 20, denied 2 counts of knowing about terrorist acts, but failing to disclose the information. Evans was convicted of 1 charge and cleared of a 2nd, while Palaskas was acquitted of both charges. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Tuesday he had ordered an expansion of contacts with the United States to ensure critical deliveries of military supplies, primarily air defense.
Today, I instructed the Minister of Defense and the Commander-in-Chief to intensify all contacts with the American side. We currently have the necessary political statements and decisions, and we must implement them as quickly as possible to protect our people and positions. This primarily concerns air defense, as well as all other elements of supply from the US. These are critical deliveries that mean saving lives and protecting Ukrainian cities and villages. I expect results from these contacts very soon, and this week we are preparing formats for meetings of our military and political teams.
European Parliament voted in favor of Bulgaria's adoption of the euro on Tuesday in Strasbourg. Bulgaria's euro adoption will come 3 years after the last eurozone expansion, when Croatia joined the single currency grouping at the start of 2023. The accession of Bulgaria into eurozone will leave only 6 of the 27 EU countries outside the single currency area: Sweden, Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, and Denmark. None of them have any immediate plans to do so either, for political reasons or because they do not meet the required economic conditions. The European Commission on Wednesday proposed an EU climate target for 2040 that for the first time would allow countries to use carbon credits from developing nations to meet a limited share of their emission goals. The European Union executive proposed a legally binding target to cut net greenhouse gas emissions by 90% by 2040 from the 1990 levels, with the aim of keeping the EU on course for its core climate aim to reach net zero emissions by 2050. But following opposition from governments including France, Germany, Italy, Poland and the Czech Republic, the Commission also proposed flexibilities that will soften the 90% emissions target for European industries. The EU has among the most ambitious climate targets of any major economy. So far, EU emission targets have been based entirely on domestic emission cuts.
Gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. We're finally here on a very hot day, and some would call that very timely. What we're doing today is taking the next step in the European Union's path to boost and enhance its competitiveness, to strengthen its independence and to cut its emissions. And we're doing so by putting forward an amendment to the European climate law that reduces emissions by 90% in 2040. We're clearly ambitious, and yet, and that is of the essence, we are pragmatic and flexible on the how to achieve it. It's a huge transition, let's just realize that. And therefore it is of the most importance to be non-dogmatic about how to reach success. A lot has been said about the flexibilities, and let me dive into that right away. Allow for, first, a limited amount of high-quality carbon credits outside of the European Union. And these carbon credits will have to be verifiable, they have to be certifiable, and they have to be additional, because only then will it truly help.
That's the news this hour. I am Barry Kumado. Thank you very much for watching, and stay with us, as up next is Signature Morning.